Well, guys, for my next big project, let's head on down to the town of South Park, Colorado. Hi, everyone, it's me, Gaming Do, and I've been waiting years to review this show. It was always a fear of mine that if I reviewed nothing but The Loud House, that I would get into controversy with that community or something, but not only do I think that's not really gonna happen, but really, even if it does, I don't really care anymore. Because I want to review my favorite cartoon of all time, which is not The Loud House, and it's not even close. That would be South Park. South Park has been my favorite show for probably almost 10 years now. I love the hell out of this show. There is just every character pretty much is likable. I mean, maybe not every single character, but there is so many characters to count and so many that are just so great that the characters who aren't that great are far less than the characters that are absolutely phenomenal. And there are countless phenomenal, great seasons and episodes of this show. Is season one of those seasons? Well, you're just going to have to wait and see, aren't you? So let's get on to the 13 episode ranking of South Park Season 1. Number 13, to me, my least favorite episode of Season 1 is going to be Death. In my opinion, Death is pretty easily the worst episode of the season. Why? Because for one, it's just kind of uncomfortable. And there's not a lot of episodes of South Park that make me uncomfortable. Like, the show is supposed to do that sometimes, but this is just, in my opinion, maybe a little too far. Like, the jokes of Stan's grandpa trying to kill himself, that's not very funny. Also, the scenes where basically the boys get framed for trying to kill Stan's grandpa is not, it's not appealing and it's not very funny. Plus, this is probably the most forgettable episode of the entire season. Like, I don't remember much more about this episode. Like, I remember Death watching Terrence and Phillip, and besides that, I don't really remember that much about this episode. It's not the worst episode of the show or anything, but in my opinion, at least, Death is my least favorite episode of Season 1. It's forgettable and kind of cruel in a way that's, I hate to say it, kind of offensive. And I usually don't get offended by this show, but this kind of went too far. Now, Damien. Damien, on the other hand, is a slight improvement from Death. I mean, I'm still not a huge fan of this episode, but there's a couple scenes that made me laugh in this episode. My favorite scene in the entire episode is by far when pretty much all of Cartman's friends get him all the Mega Man dolls he wants, but instead of Kyle getting him the red Mega Man, he gets him the Ants in the Pants game, and he basically beats the shit out of Kyle after that. That scene was funny. But is there anything else that's really funny in this episode? All the Damien scenes with him being the son of Satan is kind of amusing, but not really. I like the scenes where Jesus and Satan are in a boxing like fight and stuff like that, and how Jesus just touches Satan and he loses, but basically everyone put a bet on Satan to win the fight except for one person, And do you know who put the bet on Jesus to win? Satan himself, which is freaking hilarious. But most of the scenes, especially with the unamusing scenes with Damien, which unfortunately I gotta say is a majority of the episode, it's just not that funny. And you know who I don't find that funny that kind of has a little bit of a, not a huge role in this episode, but a bit more major than usual? That would be Pip. I don't really like Pip that much, and I know there's a lot of people who don't like him either. I don't know. He's just your typical polite British character or whatever. He's not that funny. I'm kind of glad they got rid of him, honestly. But Damien's not a bad episode. It does have some really good aspects to it, but in my opinion, it's also kind of weak. But I don't know. The last episode was like a 4 out of 10 to me. This is like a 5 or 6 out of 10. I think it's decent overall. The episode to start it all is at number 11. Yeah, this isn't one of my favorite episodes of the season, honestly. And the big reason why is it's funny, but not that funny. Like, a lot of the jokes in this episode are kind of bleeped out. Like, the whole Kyle cursing rant at the aliens was really bleeped out, and when Cartman's anal probe actually came out, it was kind of funny, and him farting fire and stuff like that. My favorite scene in this episode is by far when they get Cartman to sing I Like to Sing that song from like the 1930s or something. It was like an owl. I think, was he a Looney Tune? I don't know. Anyways. Yeah. It is the first episode, so you can't really expect it to be the best episode of the show. It's certainly memorable, but it's not my favorite because a lot of the jokes are just really, really simple in this episode, and it is the introduction to everything. It's the introduction to all the kids, most of the characters in the school, except Principal Victoria and Mr. Mackey are absent from this episode. They don't come in until later into season 1, but this is like your introduction to Mr. Garrison and Chef. And, yeah, for the most part, this is a pretty funny episode, but it's also just, it's very simplistic. Let me just put it like that. Still, it's a good start, but not the best start. Talk about forgettable. Number 10 is Mecha Streisand, and I hate to say it, but I literally saw this episode 2 days ago, and I don't have much to say. It's not inherently bad or anything. Like, it's not like, it doesn't really have that many bad aspects except for it being forgettable. Like, the only thing I really remember is the beginning song with Cartman. And, like, the whole triangle thing and how much Cartman wants Kyle's triangle thingy. Because he found it. But besides that, I don't really remember much about this episode, and I hate to say that. I'm sorry, guys, but that's about all I have to say about Mecha Streisand. Cartman's mom is a dirty slut. I like it. It's not my favorite episode of season 1, or even the entire series, but it's pretty good. And here's why. My favorite part of the episode is just... It's the joke where they have the little mystery scene where they're like, who is Eric Cartman's father? Is it Chef? Is it Mr. Garrison? Is it that guy from the Denver Broncos? I don't know what his name is, but yeah. I think it turned out it was some guy from the Denver Broncos later on in the series, but I also like the flashback scenes where it flashes back to all of the South Park adults in their younger days, as it shows truly that, yes, Cartman's mom is a dirty slut. She's pretty much banged everyone in the town of South Park. And yeah, I don't have too much more to say about this episode, except it's a pretty solid episode. Some scenes are a little forgettable, but you know what? For the most part, I like this episode. This is the first episode on this list that I really like. Big Gay Al's Gay Boat Ride. You want to know the scene I like the most? The part I like the most about this episode is just the whole gay animal sanctuary. You know, it's fun seeing all the gay animals and stuff like that, and you know, something tells me if a lot of people who were, like, politically correct saw this episode, they might get offended by this. And don't get me wrong, I support the LGBT community and stuff like that. I really do. I see a lot of people. I see even some people online who are very homophobic, and it makes me sick. Like, what's the purpose of being homophobic, huh? What is your purpose? What good does it do you? Like, let people be the way they are, for God's sakes. Like, what's your problem? I'm not going to get into any of that, but that's just my stance on LGBT. Like, I support it, and if anybody has a problem with that, then that's up to them, but I don't see why. But, anyways, this episode for the most part is really funny. It's, yet again, not one of my favorite episodes of Season 1. Just because it is kind of simplistic in its humor. But, you know what? I like the fact that everyone's betting on Stan basically winning the football team, or I don't know what I'm saying. Everyone in South Park is betting on Stan basically having South Park win an elementary school football game for the first time. But actually, it just turns out that he gets a point, and they still lose, but it's their highest game yet against them, and that was funny. This isn't my favorite episode because the humor is a little simplistic, and it's not extremely funny, but I still really like this episode. My favorite part of Weight Gain 4000 is just the very last part of the episode, where Cartman is so fat from the Weight Gain 4000 that he can't even get out of bed. I don't know why, but that got me to laugh so hard and so much that an 8-year-old kid that fat in a cartoon just got me to laugh. And I also really like the scene where the guy on the commercial is yelling, basically telling guys of 90 pounds to basically gain muscle. And then Cartman's like, yeah, I only weigh 90 pounds. And yeah, I really like this episode. I also like the parts where Mr. Garrison tries to fucking assassinate Kathie Lee Gifford. Oh my god. It's kind of shocking that a celebrity would let this happen, especially this early on in the show, but it's freaking hilarious. I also like the scenes where Wendy basically tries to expose Cartman from winning the contest, And Weight Gain 4000 is a really good episode. It's about halfway through this list, and again, it's not one of my favorites of the season. Really, the top 6 is the pretty much the really good episodes this season. But this is overall a good episode that I thoroughly enjoy. Coming in at number 6, we have An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig. In my opinion, An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig is the first episode this season that I think I love. I love this episode. There's a lot going for it, such as the whole scenes with all the basic crossbreeding and stuff like that, with the boys trying to crossbreed an elephant and a pig, and just them going to the lab basically and seeing all sorts of genetically weird animals, such as animals with 4 asses and stuff like that, and it's mind-boggling but hilarious at the same time. However, my favorite part of this episode has to be the ending where it's revealed that one of the baby pigs has the head of Mr. Garrison, which makes me wonder what the fuck Mr. Garrison did to that pig. I know Mr. Garrison is sick, but I did not expect to see something this sick this early on into South Park. But that got me laughing fucking hysterically. I love this episode. It's very funny, and it's just a joy to watch. And coming in at my number 5 spot, we have Volcano. Volcano is just one of the classics, in my opinion. The number one thing I love about this episode is the creature Cartman makes up, Scuzzlebutt, and the fact that he has Patrick Duffy as a leg. That's just freaking hilarious. And then there's just... look at this frame right here. This made me laugh hysterically. The scene where Cartman was roasting weenies over Ned's body, burning, that's just... It's kind of sick, but kind of hilarious at the same time. This is why South Park, for the most part, does dark humor very well. I love Volcano. I love the fact that this is pretty much the first time we ever see Randy, even though he's not his crazy self. He won't be his crazy self. You kind of get a hint of that in Season 3, but really it's not until Season 9 that we see his crazy self for the first time. But that's besides the point. Volcano is an awesome episode that I love, and it's honestly in my top 5 favorite of Season 1. Mr. Hanky, the Christmas Pooh, he loves me, I love you. Christmas time has come. Well, it is only about a month away, but coming in at my number 4 is Mr. Hanky, the Christmas Pooh. What else can I say? This is South Park's technically very first Christmas special, even though the first 2 shorts Matt and Trey ever did were technically Christmas specials, but this is the first Christmas special of the official show. And Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh is a classic. From the first rendition of Kyle's mom is a big fat bitch to basically everyone believing Kyle is crazy because he shows a piece of crap to everyone and he thinks Mr. Hanky is real, but until everyone believes in him, they don't think so. But then again, until they start believing in him, and Chef basically says that he believes in Mr. Hanky, and then everyone else starts to believe in him too. And yeah, this is an awesome Christmas special. It's also the first time we ever hear of Kyle being Jewish. And you know what? This episode is kind of sweet, but not really. It does have a really dark joke in the live action segment, but it's also got some really funny parts in the live action segment. I don't know. This one this one just kind of makes me feel warm cuz pretty much, I don't know, anything Christmas makes me feel warm. I really love Mr. Hanky, the Christmas Pooh. Oh boy, if there's one episode that made me laugh this season, it's Starvin' Marvin. So, the basic plot of this episode is that the boys really want a sports watch that is advertised in order to help an Ethiopian kid, but instead of getting the sports watch, they get a kid from Ethiopia. And basically, they want to return him at first, but then the boys sort of grow to like him, and then Cartman is accidentally shipped to Ethiopia. And remember, this is kind of dark, so please don't blame me. If you're going to blame anybody, blame Matt and Trey, because they're the ones who came up with these jokes. But basically, I forgot who the celebrity was, but some celebrity was eating all these snacks in Ethiopia and basically keeping them from the hungry Ethiopians, and Cartman basically arguing with her. Well, two fat characters arguing over food is... It's the only part that wasn't that funny, but the rest of this episode is just freaking hilarious. This is probably honestly my favorite Kenny death of season 1, where the turkeys just basically freaking mutilate him. It's freaking crazy and hilarious. Starvin' Marvin, what a classic. I love this episode, and honestly, I don't remember that much about Starvin' Marvin in space, but I hope it's just as funny as this. Mr. Garrison's David Hasselhoff face. That's the best way to enter number 2, Tom's Rhinoplasty. Oh my god, I love this episode so much. These top 2 are by a landslide my favorite episodes of the first season of South Park. And I'll get into why right now. First of all, while I may not like it as much as the SpongeBob movie, this is probably the second best appearance of David Hasselhoff in a cartoon. In a way, like, I know he was in live action in the SpongeBob movie, but he's technically in live action here too. And it's just hilarious that Mr. Garrison was said to get a nose job, but he actually got his whole face turned into David Hasselhoff, and it's bizarre but hilarious. And the other plot with the teacher, I think her name was Miss Ellen, taking over the class when Mr. Garrison gets surgery, and all the boys fall in love with her. It's pretty cool. Do you want to know my favorite part of this episode? And I never would have expected to say this, but it's Wendy Testerberger. She's pretty fucking evil. Like, it's revealed at the end of the episode that Miss Ellen is actually an Iraqi fugitive and she's taken back and basically blasted into the sun. But do you know who's responsible for basically blasting her into the sun? And the Iraqi soldiers capturing her? It was Wendy, Stan's girlfriend. If that's what she's capable of, I am scared to mess with her. And I don't have much more to say except that twist ending and just finding out how evil Wendy is and Mr. Garrison's new face just makes this episode freaking awesome. But there is no episode this season that quite compares, in my opinion, to number one, the Halloween special, Pink Eye. Pink Eye, in my opinion, is not only one of the best episodes of South Park Season 1, but it's probably one of my favorite episodes of the first 3 seasons, which is a little bit of a weak point for the show. It didn't start off as great as it would get eventually, like starting with Season 4 onward, but Pink Eye, in my opinion, is by far the best episode of Season 1. Just everything about it is hilarious. From Kenny basically turning everyone into zombies to Cartman's Halloween costume being extremely offensive. Both his Halloween costumes. I'm not going to say it because it would maybe offend people, but it's really offensive, and that's freaking hilarious that an 8-year-old kid would be wearing that. And I also, probably my favorite part of the episode is when Chef turns into a zombie and then basically he starts dancing and singing like Michael Jackson's Thriller. That was an awesome scene. And the whole Halloween costume, I liked the fact that almost everyone was Chewbacca, but Stan was a Raggedy Andy, I think his name was. But Wendy betrayed him and actually turned out to be Chewbacca, and then Stan hates her after that, but learns to forgive her in the end. And also, my favorite costume was probably Kyle's when he was the solar system. I don't know, man. I love this episode. This is by far my favorite episode of the first season of South Park. I don't have any flaws with it. I think it's hilarious. I think it's got a great Halloween tone, and just what an awesome episode. And we did it. We have ranked every episode of South Park Season 1 from the worst to the best. Now, at the end of every South Park ranking, I'm going to give it a rating and where it places among the seasons that I've reviewed so far. So, overall, in my opinion, I like South Park Season 1. But it is admittedly a weaker season of the show because the comedy is very, very simplistic, where a lot of the jokes are just fart and toilet humor this season, and the humor isn't quite as dark per se, and it's... Cartman would act kind of how a normal 8-year-old would act, in a way, this season, comparing him to even a couple seasons later in, like, Season 5, where he's just messed up and cuts Scott Tenderman's parents up and makes them into chili. And, that's the thing. The reason why I don't like this season as much as some of the later seasons is just simply the humor's a little too simple. If the humor was a little more mature and wasn't just a lot of fart and toilet humor and simple humor, then it would have been a little bit better. But the best way to call this season is simplistic but good, and that's why I give it a 7 out of 10. Obviously, there's no other seasons to rank yet, so it's number 1. Will this season be better or worse than Season 2, though? You'll have to find out next month with my ranking of South Park Season 2. So I hope you guys liked this video. I certainly did. I certainly love that I finally have branched out to other cartoons. And yeah, that's about it, guys. Gaming Do here. See you later. Bye.